Plumbing Solutions Educational Series. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about our drum machines, or our cable machines, or sewer machines, and some people just call them sewer snakes, but it's your mechanical drain cleaning. Now, the one that we particularly use when we have clogs is what we call our medium drum machine. It's kind of big, it's on a cart with wheels, and I can't exactly put it on my table here. But I do have some of the smaller ones here, and we're going to talk about them, and we are going to cover them individually as we go through this episode. Now, with all of the episodes I do on tools or on a fixture, I always like to get into a little bit of history just to kind of give us an idea of why we do what we do and you know where we're going with this. Well, sewer cleaning and sewer clogs go all the way back to the first sewers. Now, we have no idea thousands of years ago when the first sewer actually came into play. But anytime there's a large growth of a civilization and a lot of people living in one area, you've got a problem that you've got to take care of, and you've got to get that waste out of your town, and you can't have it contaminating your drinking water. So the invention of the sewer. Now, we know that the ancient Minoans had sewers, we know the ancient Egyptians had sewers, we know the ancient Greeks had sewers, and then of course the ancient Romans really came along and perfected their sewer and water systems to the best of their abilities at their time. Now, at a certain point, we go into the plumbing dark ages and all of this stuff disappears and doesn't really reappear until the Renaissance era. And we've got London and Paris with all kinds of nasty problems because people were dumping their stuff on the streets. So they had to come up with a better plan for a sewer. Well, and in doing that, now you're going to have your clogs, you've got your sewer workers maintaining these things. So the first type of equipment that they would have had would have been basically these sewer picks or rakes. And it was a long pole with some kind of weird looking head. Either it was a claw or a shovel or a spear looking point, or some type of retrieval head that they could go in and break that stuff up and send it on down the line. Later on, they started making those things sectional, where you could just feed it into the pipe, clip on another one, or screw on another section of the pole and keep going like that. That became the invention of the first sewer rods. Now, I do know through my research that you can still buy sewer rods. They're little metal rods like that that you can screw together and feed down, but I don't know anybody that uses those. I've never really seen it ever used practically before. So after the sewer pick, we run into something that I would probably never use, but it was called a sewer ball. Here in America, they called it a sewer pill. And essentially, it's a wooden ball slightly smaller than the diameter of the pipe you're going to use it on. And they would put this in the pipe, they'd let the water pressure build up behind it, and it would force that ball down through the pipe, and it would roll around and stir up and clean up any kind of debris or dirt that had settled on the bottom. And then when it gets to the next basin or manhole, the ball would float to the top, and they could collect it and they could use it over and over again. Now, through my research, I've learned that this is a maintenance thing. They didn't really use this to clean clogs out. They used it as a preventative thing. So they were using these sewer balls over and over again. Now, later on, they got rid of the wooden ones and they made them out of steel, and they were hollow so that they would still float, and they got really big. But that's not something I would use on a sewer, because you put something that large in your sewer pipe, you're asking for trouble, because it could get clogged itself, and then you've got a bigger problem. After that, we kind of move into something I took out of my museum here. Now, this is called a flat snake or a sewer ribbon. And like I said, this came out of my museum. I do keep this one on my truck just in case. But it's a flat, flexible piece of steel that comes off this reel pretty easy and goes back on there. Now, you're going to do this by hand. You're going to feed this off the reel and go down through your clean out or underneath a toilet or something like that. This guy's good for soft clogs. Not really going to help you out a whole lot with roots or anything really tough, but I keep it. I have used it, and my favorite thing about it is this is a manual tool. This is not. There's no electric motor. There's no plugs. There's no cords, and it's pretty light. It's not heavy. If you've got a simple soft clog and you just want to get rid of that guy without having to draw out a bunch of drop cords and carry around a heavy duty machine to do something simple, I really like using that one. Now, after that guy, we're going to get to about 1930, and along comes this man by the name of Samuel Blanc, and he's got a problem. Well, it's not really his problem, it's his son's problem. And there's a couple variations of this story. Some of them say that it was his daughter-in-law had the problem, but it kind of all gets us to the same place. Well, his son lived in Des Moines, Iowa, in a heavy urban area, and he owned an apartment. Well, he kept having some trouble with the sewer backing up. Well, it didn't take him long to figure out that they had roots in their sewer line. So there was some issue. Like I said, there's variations of the story and tales. It's all over the place. Where there was a tree they couldn't cut down. It was under a road. It was under his neighbor's house or something. And they couldn't dig up the sewer line to remove the roots. So Samuel Blanc came up with an idea. He took a wash machine motor, and he took like a steel cage, and he took a steel 3/8" cable, wound it in that cage, put a belt around it, and then the story says he put it in a red child's wagon. And then there's another version of the story said he took child's skates and strapped it to the bottom of the thing. Anyway, it was mobile. He could push it around. It was on wheels. And on the end of that 3/8 cable, he put a blade type apparatus, very similar to some of the stuff we still use today. And what it did was the motor would spin, the motor would rotate that cage just like a drum, and it would spin that cable, which drove that cutting head around and around. I'm sure it didn't have a whole lot of power and was pretty rickety at first, but it did the job. It really worked. And he said, I got this awesome idea. So he went and got a patent on it. And then over the years he perfected it, and it was right about 1935 he released this thing for sale to the public. Now, we're right in the middle of the Great Depression. There's a lot of young people out there that are really looking for jobs, and this offers up something that they could do. They could buy Mr. Blanc's machine, they could go into business for themselves in their own local town, and they could really make some money. Now, it costs $250 to buy his machine. And you think, well, that's a lot of money. That was really a lot of money in 1935. But it also came with the rights to use his patent, and it also came with the rights to use the name. Now, that machine did get a name, and it was Mr. Blanc's wife who coined the phrase, and she named it the Roto-Rooter. So, we're not going to talk anymore about that because he did later sell that company, and it became a national company, and that national company then went around and started buying up those little local businesses back from those people, and then it became the big massive national corporation that it is now. But that pretty much covers our history. So we're going to take a little break, and we're going to talk about some parts and stuff. All right, the parts. I think the best place we should start, we're talking about our cable drum machines. Some of them, like your smaller ones here, just they have a fixed head. This is called a bulb auger. This is the most common one. It's a retrieval head. It's designed to go in there and kind of spin around whatever's clogging your pipe, and then you can pull it back and kind of get a sample of what's going on. If it's roots, you're going to have those little capillary roots all stuck up in here. If it's a baby wipe or whatever, it'll get all tied around the end of it. Now, like I said, this is my K45 little hand machine here, hand drill machine. It's fixed on that cable, you can't remove it. Now, the bigger machines, they have the bulb augers or the retrieval heads as well, but they're removable. and they do have a special tool. Now we're going to go over this when we go outside, but you can take these heads on and off. This is your retrieval tool. I have two different kinds here. These are the smaller heads. This one's called your drop auger. This one will fall down like that. It's for when you've got fixtures back to back. If you use a solid one like this, a lot of times this head can hop right across that T. Well, with a drop auger, it's gonna want to go down that pipe. You know, if you're lucky, you gotta fight with them sometimes. But the next one in the group here is your spade tip, and it's just a little flat, little kind of diamond shapy little tip. This one is good for if you want to knock that clog out. If you're not real sure, you've got so much water backed up and you really want to knock that clog out. For me, I kind of always go for my spade head. These retrieval heads and these bulb augers are good for kind of giving you an idea of sampling and knowing what's down there. They can clear a clog. They are good for that too, but I'm not a fan. I'd rather get down in there with one of these because we're in new construction. I might be dealing with something that's a little more than what that can handle. Then after that, for more of a final cleaning, they have the C-tip head. Now this one can cut roots, especially once they get wore out. These little edges will get pretty sharp. But primarily this is used for cutting grease. This is really used for grease. And it's kind of a finesse head. This is kind of the last one you want to use if you're doing a real thorough job on cleaning. But like I said, you know, we're a new construction company. Most of the time we're dealing with baby wipes or feminine products, something that should not go down your sewer line. We do run into some construction debris, and unfortunately sometimes it's pieces of plastic which belongs to us. But it is our responsibility to remove it. Now these are the small ones for our K400 cable, and then we do have a K750 back there, and it uses a lot bigger stuff, and this is the retrieval head or the bulb auger for that guy. It's a different setup, different hookup. It works similar, but they don't want you hooking a small head to a big cable, and they don't want you hooking a big head to a small cable because you can get in trouble. Now the K750 is a root cutter. It's really designed for that, and that's where these big heads come from. This is a 3-inch, and you can get them in various different sizes. If you're in a pinch and all you've got is a 3-inch and you're trying to clean out, say, a 6-inch pipe, you can kind of bend these heads out a little bit, but I wouldn't do too much of that. I'd be real careful. But here again, we're not doing a whole lot of root cutting because that happens 20-something years down the road, and we don't really do a lot of service. But that's kind of it with your heads. I do want to talk about some of the things that I have here. Like I said, this is the Rigid K45. This is a drill machine. It does have forward and reverse on it. The other one I've got is, and I love how Rigid stuff's all K. This is a K6, and this is a closet auger. And it's got a little bit bigger cable than that guy, but it does have a fixed bulb head on it. And this is for cleaning out the trapways on toilets. And you stick it in there and you can manually crank it. The neat thing about this one is why it's called a P or whatever. You can take the handle off and you can screw a drill on there if you really needed to. But I can't really figure out what you need to hit a drill with one of these guys. That's something serious. Maybe use on a urinal or something. All right, well now, safety. We're just going to touch briefly on safety. We're going to go over this again when you're out there. You're going to want to wear your safety glasses. I would prefer a full face shield because you are in the sewer pipe, and if you've got a major backup, it's a lot of wastewater and there's a lot of different stuff in it. You don't want these in your eyes, you don't want it in your mouth, you don't want it on your face, in your nose. So protect yourself. If you're lucky, you can go get a cheap full face shield, you know, from some of these little cheapy hardware stores. But wear your safety glasses. All kinds of things can happen with these guys. Your cable can break, you can get hung on something. I remember my first experience with a sewer machine, and this was before I was a plumber. I had a problem with roots at my house, and I was having to pay a plumber to come out like once every year and clean that line out. And I was like, man, I can do this. And I just went and bought a cheapy machine. And me, thinking I knew what I was doing, I put the biggest head I could find for that. It came with that machine on there, and it was a root cutting head like that. And I shoved that thing down there as hard as it would go, and it got caught. The cable locked up. I couldn't get off the pedal fast enough. That machine flipped over 3 times, landed on top of me, and the cable broke in half. So whenever you're dealing with this stuff, always start small and then move up to your larger ones and go slow. Some of these machines, like this one, has this self-feed thing. I know a lot of older experienced plumbers that say don't use the self-feed. Do it by hand. That way you can feel it. You can feel when you hit that clog. It's up to you. I like to use the self-feed to get to the clog, and then of course when I'm spooling that thing back up, I always use the self-feed to pull it back onto the drum. Now, gloves. You're gonna want to wear gloves. It can get bad quick. I know a lot of people that have hurt themselves with cables binding, twisting, breaking. You don't want to use these kind of gloves. You'd think that this is great, and I do like these style gloves for when I'm using a lot of different tools because it's cloth with that rubber protection. But something I found out with these guys is that spring can actually pinch and catch this rubber part, and it's going to take your hand with it. Even just plain old latex rubber gloves, they can get caught, and they will rip off of you, but these latex gloves are a lot stronger than you think, and once it gets bound up, I've had that happen a few times where I thought I was all right with these guys, but what you really need is a leather glove. Now, that being said, it's a leather glove. You're dealing with a sewer, you're dealing with sewer water, you've got to back up, the stuff is everywhere. I recommend, Rigid recommends, most drain cleaning companies recommend, put your rubber gloves on first, and then put your leather gloves on top. Now, there's another glove out there that's highly recommended, but I don't really see them a whole lot. It's called a staple mitt. Now, I've heard they're really popular with the sectional machines, which is much different than a drum machine. It's sections. Those machines spin a lot faster. I've been told at some of the road shows we go to that they love to use those machines out west because they're doing a lot of drain cleaning from the roof. We don't get on roofs. We're going to do it some other way. But those section machines are lighter, but they do spin faster. So that mitt is preferred because your fingers aren't open to get caught in that fast spinning cable, and it does have little staple plates across it, so it's kind of reinforced with metal. The next thing would be anytime you're using a power tool, something that's electric, you're gonna want to take it out of the box, or if it's back in our equipment room and you're checking it out for the day, cover your butt, check it out, make sure it's in good working order, make sure there's nothing missing, make sure the cord's not frayed or damaged in any way that could cause a problem. You might want to set it up, give it a spin before you ever leave the shop, because I know when I was doing service work, the worst thing is getting a machine that somebody's used, going out there in the field, and they've been running it in reverse, and they've got it all bird nest up inside of there, and you're done. That you can't, the only thing I can figure is chain it to a tree and tie that cable around to the back of your truck and snatch it out of there. I don't know. I've had so much trouble with some of those machines, especially the ones that say explicitly on it, do not run this machine in reverse. It's on here somewhere. Yeah, there it is. Do not run this machine in reverse. These machines have reverse, but it's if you get stuck. if you get stuck on something and you can't get back, you can back off of it in reverse, just bump it. But you do not want to run that thing any length of time in reverse, because you will damage your cable. You will twist that thing up in your drum and you've got a problem. So don't ever run it in reverse unless you absolutely have to, and if you do, you're just going to bump it off of whatever you're hung up on. But all right, I think that pretty much covers everything we're going to do in here. Now we're going to go outside and we're going to start trying to use some of these machines.